Okay. Not sure if you could see the trailer. I hope so. Besides that, let me just switch the screens again. I can also see me. How will I do that? Okay, perfect. Good. So yeah, it's my great pleasure to welcome Emmanuel Bricard, who is the Chief Information Officer at elm.leblanc, expert with IT engineering and in project and business management. He is specialized in IT strategy, mobile devices, Industry 4.0, and lean management. He has been working for elm.leblanc for more than 10 years, driving digital transformation into the company. So I'd like to hand over to you, Emmanuel, and looking forward to your keynote.
Thank you, Mark Oliver. Hi, everyone. I'm very glad to be here, and thanks for the great opportunity to present this keynote about enhanced company resilience through cybersecurity. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm working for elm.leblanc, which is a subsidiary of Bosch. We are making boilers, heating system, and clean systems, and basically Bosch, under all its brands, umbrella is the leader in the Western Europe of heating systems. So in this company, I'm here since since Saturday. It's been 15 years that I joined elm.leblanc and Bosch. It's been a great ride, and we did a lot of very intense and very passionate projects on a lot of technologies. It's funny because when I remember my first interview there, I would have not thought about how many IT IM topics would be important for such a traditional industry like heating. So, to finish the portrait of elm.leblanc, we have about 1,000 collaborators in France. We have 2 production plants. And as we are part of the Bosch Thermal Technology division, we have lots of exchanges with other plants, sharing best practices and technologies. So, basically, I'm a science fiction fan. I was raised without TV, and then I read lots of books, tons of books, and thousands of books, especially science fiction one. My dad was very fanatic of it and transferred that to me. And what I like with science fiction is how it explores the world, of course with anticipation visions, but how technologies will shape the world in the future. This is really what science fiction is. It's not like Star Wars battles with lasers or whatever. It's really about how technology shapes the world. And when you read science fiction books, most of them have been written by some technology experts. Most of them are researchers. And somehow it really gave me my first steps in direction to IT, preparing me to try to be part of that change that new technology brings over the world. I'm a former developer, so I started developing C# solution as well as PHP and a lot of the things, designing database and doing a lot of stuff for services activity, mobile devices, as well as industry solutions that I worked on in the 2010s and that are still operational today. What I like with IT is that I really believe that it's a power we can use to improve the other people's lives. Most people don't know what is feasible with IT, and usually they are shy to ask something. And when we fight a little bit to develop a great solution, usually 100 hundreds of maybe thousands of people can benefit from it every day. So it works, I believe for me, it's a chance to be able to have such a positive impact on a lot of people, a lot of colleagues' life. So I really enjoy that. So I have this background, and I'm really overall passionate about how new technology shape the world, and basically what I was reading when I was a child is now becoming more and more reality when we talk about AI, when we talk about augmented reality, things like that, happening to life, and I even have some projects working on using those technologies. So yeah, I'm very pleased to be at such a place where I understand the world how it is today, and I can act to make it, I hope, better tomorrow. So I'm not, so maybe this is a big difference between me and all the other speakers. I'm not at all a security expert, which means from my professional point of view, I'm a user of security. I work with security firms, security expert approach when I need to design a new solution or we do some security reviews of existing systems. Security is everywhere because IT systems are everywhere and the systems are spreading even more everywhere. But I give you the point of view of the non-expert guy and regarding security, and well, maybe this will give a specific point of view, but it may be also bringing some hints of what you, I'm talking to the PhD students there and all the students that are working on security, what you can provide to people like us that are from the industry or from IT or both, but that are not all security experts. And how the world is changing and how you can help us to face those changes. So you all know of course, digital transformation. I'll be quick on that. It's not a way like previous revolutions. First revolution was based on steam engine, and then the electricity made the second one. Then the third one was on IT and chips and all the electronic components. But for this new wave, whatever how you call it, it's a lot of technology that comes wave by wave in parallel, and the more time flies and the more you got a larger number of waves that spread all around the world, and that changed everything. Of course, it somehow started with the internet. Of course, 1990s were not the years of the internet, but it's the beginning of internet spreading to every homes at the end of the 1990s, and of course in universities, in all universities, and bringing online some lot of new potentials, some opportunities, some websites, and so on. So the iPhone is 2007. So it's just a little bit more 10 years old, and when you look at how we shape the world today, it's just crazy to see such impact, and how we are closely related to our smartphones today, and how it impacts the world, how we always look at these screens all the time. And so it's enormous, and it's only 13 years old. IoT at home, the same thing like internet. Of course, it started before, but since the years 2000s, it started to spread in every homes, and now you got 30% of houses in the US that have some Alexa or Google Home devices, and it's growing faster and faster. Because the more some people have it, and the more they convince the others to try it and use it. And this is all accelerating, and of course, the smartphone was one device doing so many things, killing so many other devices in the past, like the camera, video games, the MP3 player, and so on. IoT at home will change as well so many aspects, so many things that we have in our homes, as well as create new businesses, new opportunities. Everything can be connected at home, so of course we start with the lights and the AI systems, but it's just a very small beginning. And in the industry, you got the same thing with what we call Industry 4.0. So IoT devices are spreading more and more everywhere. Everyone knows that in the short-term future, all machines will be connected, all people will be connected. They all use some new kind of devices and tools that will work autonomously or semi-autonomously together to have some plans that are more flexible, that are able to do more customization of products for customers, and so on and so on. And this is just two examples, but the waves are still continuing to expand and bring a lot of new technologies, and this is just the new normal that this change will continue all the time and will continue to grow. And we never had a period of time in our human history while in such a small scale of time everything was changing fast. And even in the 1930, Walt Disney, the creator of Mickey Mouse, was saying that the world is going so fast today. It's almost a century later, it's still the same thing, but of course it's way more accelerated, and it looks like it's accelerating exponentially as a stable basis for tomorrow's world. So the world is changing in a different way every day, which means it's very easy to be left aside, and it's, let's say, it's our role from IT people, from technical people, from open mind with close connection to technology to help the others to engage with this new world that is changing all the time. And of course, when you have all these technologies coming, of course they are all based about IoT devices, or even low-house sigfox, new kind of devices, but all those things are connected and all those things can be hacked. So while the technology front enlarges all the time exponentially, then the threat front enlarges as well. So, one thing, John Potter is a very famous, probably the most famous management consultant who wrote a lot of books that have been bought, that have made reports in the New York Times and so on. And what he's saying is that now the change is permanent, and what is constant is that everything will continue to change. And what he does not say there, but what he says in a lot of interviews is that it will continue to accelerate over time, and it is just the beginning, it's the new normal. So, what is digital transformation? First, is cultural change, because we need to be aware of this change, embrace it, to accept that our daily life, unlike what happened to our parents and their parents, is changing all the time, which means we won't have only one job, we have to learn all the time. I personally believe it's a great thing to learn all the time, because this is where you stay in good shape. But some people were not trained in that, and it's important that we spread the word that it's a matter of, it's vital to be able to learn all your life and evolve this way and help the others to do the same. And in this change, the first aspect is the consumer-centric part, and we got a great example tomorrow morning with Amazon keynote about that, how to bring a new consumer-centric approach, and also data mindset, because it's been about 10 years that everyone is saying that there is a new gold mine, that there is an oil, and whatever. But it's great to say, now change the process in the company to be able to manage all those data during all their lives, from the creation of a project to the end, the replacement of the device, is something that is far from being into the future of most companies. And this is critical if you want to be able to do an AI growth, because of course data is the gasoline for AI. So develop this new consumer-centric and the data mindset are the first things of this data transformation. Then the second one disruption. Disruption happens in all kinds of industries, and those who are not disrupted yet are afraid of the next disruption, and of course they know, they are aware that they need to change because something will change. If they do not bring these disruptions, it will be a startup or competitors. So how to be able to bring those new culture of changing what works, when it still works, to try something else before someone else does this better than you. And then, of course, connect the world through the cloud and IoT. So just the cloud is something that has been very complicated to a lot of companies, especially for IT people, because usually IT people had legacy systems that we tried to protect as we could, as much as we could, and suddenly we need to go into some third-party suppliers that have to manage our security for us, Amazon Web Services and Azure and so on. So it's a profound responsibility change, and it's been hard to accept in a lot of groups and companies because a lot of companies believe they are IT assets, and it's been a hard change that slows down probably a lot of groups to make the transition. And of course, IoT, when you have IoT, you cannot control everything from your own legacy systems. IoT connects to the cloud, of course, and especially when you talk about edge computing. So these IoT devices are not working only for you, they're working for your customers, they're working at some point on the value chain level, and you need to be able to connect with all this with thinking completely differently the concept of security. The last aspect that is really important is because of all those ways of technology, you cannot do everything yourself. Whatever how big you are, whatever if you grow with billions of dollars and have all the cash, you cannot be expert of everything. You cannot be expert of all those technological waves that are coming faster and faster, which means more and more you need to be able to develop new ways of working with like academics, for example. We have a strong partnership with IMD and CPD Telecom, and allowed us to do a lot of new research and development that we were not able to do before. New ways of working, also more and more involved using open source solutions. While in some groups it's still forbidden, but it's again in the same history. If you do not reinvent the wheel, you can go way faster and way further. So such changes are before everything else, before any technical discussions. It's more than everything cultural changes. So questions of all the big companies are: okay, I want to disrupt my market. But I'm a big group, I'm not a startup. So how can I be fast and agile like a startup? While being secure and being able to industrialize things with security and reliable systems that our customers are expecting from us. And there's a big kind of schizophrenia, maybe, comparing both models and trying to adapt them because they are so different. An agile organization focused on customer experience like a startup will really go into the key value of its offer to the customer, while a big company usually is based on one thing called risk management. And that is covered usually by a lot of standards that are defined at the top and goes down, and sometimes in more evolved groups, it's defined collaboratively on the field, but it's not always the case. And this risk management approach is hardly able to cohabitate with agile organization. So this is a big problem because most organizations have a hard time to, while they know they have to change, while they see our startup working and bringing faster than they could ever bring some new technologies and new offers, well, they just stay working the same way with the risk management approach, and everyone is protecting himself, and every procedure is supposed to make people to do good things, whatever happens. And instead of pushing leadership and autonomy and responsibility, such approach is just killing the groups, and most of them will disappear because of that simple reason. So John Potter proposed a great video about this. You can look at YouTube, moving in a faster and faster moving world, and he has an answer to that. And the crazy thing is that company groups are knowing that and still have a hard time to embrace the trade model, even if they know they are too slow. And all this is amplified in this world of hyperconnectivity, because with IoT and edge solution, what we had from IT security in legacy system was to use the castle approach, where you had these big castles that were protected and nobody was able to entrance, no intruder was allowed because it was detected on the periphery. And now with IoT, of course, you have your castle, but then you have potentially millions of devices around, or millions of devices, whatever, that connects to your castle. And then this means the castle itself has so many entrants that it is very hard to protect it. And so a lot of security models and a lot of you are knowing them way better than I will ever, like zero trust approach and things like that. And so this is a big problem, how to cope with IoT solutions if you don't want to go into the edge and into the cloud, and then if you want to go into the cloud, probably you need to get rid of the legacy system as much as possible, because keeping both approach, cloud solution and legacy castle approach solutions, are creating, because they are combined, a huge complexity that makes it very hard to maintain, and add a lot of work to a lot of uncertainty to the IT teams that needs to manage the old world and the new one that they need to learn to be efficient with that and so on. And at the same time, you also have a lot of other IoT devices that are bring by your colleagues, by yourself, like you bring your phone because you like to use such phone and not the company one, and you use a lot of devices basically in your daily life that are some potential IoT devices that have embedded firmware, like let's say for whatever. You have so many things that have intelligence inside, and that seems harmless, but they are not. I put this window because HP put a report where they were stating that someone in one of the customers were just using this small clean device, and it was plugged on a laptop just to recharge. But he has malicious code inside, and then was able to send data from the company away in some foreign countries. So even if those examples are quite rare, they happen. And so the company now is tied between the IoT solutions they need to develop and the IoT device it brings to its collaborators. And at the same time, there's also a lot of other shallow IoT devices that are used by the collaborators, and most of them don't even know the risk, even if you do a lot of trainings, because they do not have this culture, and it has an even harder to fight layer of complexity. And so clearly there's a need to have a new approach and leave this castle approach that was probably needed at some point in time, but now that looks completely out of today's time. So this was what happened, and then all this was amplified even before COVID-19 in what we call the future world, because things are changing faster and faster, and some geopolitical events have some big impacts on the business. I will give you some few examples. So in the world division, we have a big plant in Turkey that is nine times bigger than the one we have in France, for example, in the next Paris. And then a military coup d'etat happened in Turkey in 2016. And before this, France was seen as a high-cost country, and Turkey was seen as a less expensive country. So let's put a lot of resources there, let's build a lot of warriors there, because it's not expensive, they are good, so it's fine. And after this coup d'etat, what happened is that France is still a high-cost country, but it's stable, whatever what the yellow jackets are doing, at least they put some smokes in the Champs-Élysées and they do a lot of fireworks and things like that, but at least they do not stop our factories to create borders and so on. Even if it has been complicated at the time, it was not a coup d'etat. And Turkey was suddenly not that expensive, but potentially very unstable. Which means, from a business point of view, you need backups. You need to be able to produce those borders tomorrow, maybe somewhere else, because if something happens, you cannot deliver your customer anymore. So, this is one example. Of course, you see others to the Brexit. In France, in our retail plants, we are creating tanks, stainless steel tanks for the British market. And with the Brexit, of course, the valuation of the monies changed, and when the pound dropped, our tanks that we produced in France were, of course, less relevant in the UK market, because when you create something in euro, when the pound is down, then it's harder to sell it in the UK market. And so, of course, we reduced the production capacity for the UK market because it makes no sense. It was not making any more sense. And so you see how few examples of how the events, the context impact the business directly and completely change the way we are able or not to enter some markets and even the way some markets are dying. If I take the climate change, Macron government, so in French people say Macron, nothing happens, he's doing nothing, and blah blah blah. In the heating market, we know that it's not exactly true because they decided to kill oil boilers, which have been here since a while, and even if new oil boilers were creating less pollution than former ones, then the government say, okay, within the next 10 years, we'll kill these activities in France. And of course, they say that in December 2018. You can imagine how many orders of oil boilers we got in January 2019. So it was direct, immediate impact, and how political decisions could influence the customer choices. And in that area, most of them just postpone their purchase because they don't know what to buy. Because in a lot of cases, it's hard to put something else than an oil boiler instead of an oil boiler. Sometimes you can, but the equipment is great, but sometimes not. So, anyway, just some example of how the world is going more and more to be unpredictable. And again, like the changes you see in digital transformation, where the change is now permanent, looks like, even from geopolitical point of view, it's exactly the same. Companies will need to be able to adapt to some things that are unpredictable, that have nothing to do with themselves, but that impact directly their business and that make them suffer and sometimes disappear. So it was already very, very, very complex, and then the COVID pandemic started. And then suddenly, the digital transformation that was so complicated to explain to people from companies and the IT division who did not always want to go to the cloud and so on. A lot of corporate IT security experts were saying, you know, we should not go too fast, we are good with our great legacy security systems and so on, so do not move to the cloud, because I even heard sometimes that the cloud is only something that benefits to the cloud provider, which was a strange vision of it, but very interesting anyway. And then suddenly with the COVID pandemic, You saw probably in LinkedIn that this picture related to digital transformation of the company. Is it the CEO? Is it the CTO? Or is it the COVID-19? Of course, it's the COVID-19. Suddenly, you just could not work on the office, then you had to find some ways. And some ways means some digital tools that a lot of teams refused to use before. I can give you some examples, very concrete. We got, before the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of orders coming from customers using fax systems, those machines that probably that most students here never saw in their lives. In my team, one new apprentice told me I never saw a fax in my life before coming here. And what I was hearing when I was discussing with the sales manager, our customers, they don't use fax, it's in their habits, so they do not like to change, they like it like that. And some fax were received, then you need to have some people taking care of those, and even sometimes those faxes were scanned to be digitally stored and archived. So it makes no sense, but well, all the time I was hearing that, okay, the customer wants it, it's fine, they don't work this way, we cannot shock them and so on, we need to listen to the customer, okay. I was very surprised anyway. Suddenly with the pandemic, of course all fax stopped because it was not possible to get fax anymore, and we implemented of course some fax to mail things, but suddenly everyone was going to a full digital mode, and including those customers that were supposedly very happy to use fax. And so all companies saw very strong acceleration regarding digital transformation. So some say we saw, like Microsoft, they say we saw 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. Some say it's 3 years in 3 months, but whatever. A lot of companies move to the next level of digital transformation, and a lot of them discover a lot of new potentials, and it's great. But of course, this happens in crisis mode, which means we did some crazy things that, from a security point of view, looked impossible a couple of years ago, like take a desktop computer from your company and put it at home because it needs to work and you need to work and you have no ways you have not enough laptop, so you need to bring some device to people. And a lot of crazy solutions happened. And this change, and as it is transformation, this change in the root of how we work together, and there's before and after. And so the question is how we will do tomorrow, because of all those changes, the digital world, the pandemic, and of course, probably the biggest challenge of our life that we will face in the future, and that the world here will face even more than us, is environmental change. So for companies, the most important thing now is how to survive. And this is called resilience, how to survive to shocks, how to cope with all these unpredictable changes from an individual level and from a corporate level. In all the leader of the organization, how to be resilient, to continue our activities, to expand, to create new opportunities, and all this in this digital accelerated world is more and more connected. So this is what we call digital resilience. How companies can rely on digital to be able to survive all those changes that is the new normal. So of course, this quest for resilience is something that's happening at all kinds of levels. Individual level, and we saw all the change that we had. All the people that suffer from confinement, at least in French, it's big confinement, multiple months, and it was hard for some people to stay home and have the ability to work or be unable to work sometimes. So it was it's a big change. Home office brings some new ways of working, and then for a lot of social groups, for a lot of people, it's been an opportunity as well as a threat. How to work together. As a company, of course, when you create a team, I created my team in 2010, When you create a team, at least in the past, we have this sense of proximity. We share some space, some physical space together, we grow together, we listen to each other, we smile to each other, we learn to live next to each other, and this is how the team grows. And then you can have great team spirit, and you can develop the company, and do a lot of projects, and support each other, and grow together. This is the key. How to do that? In distance. Because of course, and I'm totally with Mark Oliver and all the organizer of this event. We prepare challenges to be able to do some concrete things together next to each other, to challenge the students and so on, and have a lot of great things. Now it's different, and we'll have that later, I hope. But it's a clear example of how we need to reinvent ourselves to be able to, survive, change, and enjoy that, because it may last. It's been a while already that the topic started, and it may continue to last. And even when it will stop, maybe something else will come. And something else will come, but probably with different forms. So we are more and more relying on digital technologies for everything we do, for private life, for work activities, and this is just the beginning, which means the security part of things is going to be more and more important. So I'll skip that because I have not much time, but then for this resilience you have a lot of challenge to face, and especially change your mindset to be able to accept all those changes and set a new strategic challenge that may lead to new business models at the end, be able to find resources to change for the future, because when everything is fine, how to say, okay, I need additional resources, or I grab these resources that are working on this successful project to put them on something else that may bring no results, or that may create a marvel. We don't know. We need to invent. We need to experiment, because if we don't do it, we may be disrupted tomorrow. And ideological challenge, because right now you have all those groups that buy each other and so on, and they want to optimize everything and get more money, and the bottom line is what matters. And at some point in time, when you are in a quest for resilience, maybe it's not the most important thing. Maybe the most important thing is the link you have with your employees, with your customer, and that's what able to last, and that's what able to evolve as the world evolves. And this is completely different. So it's a shift that you need to embrace. And so how to look at to evolve? Well, there's a lot of source of inspiration. Of course, in Asia, I'll put some sources that I know better. So of course you can look at how the KFA are working, how some new industrial companies are working at their start phases. And basically it's all about strong leadership, the opportunity to be able to do things, and we'll see that with Facebook, customer-centric culture and innovation, and an organization that is a little bit more open to the world than it was in the past, and of course the right development and all that. The right methods that come from IT that you can reuse in different forms in all industries basically and all activities. So in basics, what happened? Well, you have this leader that inspires these guys with a strong mission. With Tesla, accelerate the world transition to sustainable energy, and with SpaceX, making human a multi-planetary species. How you can be bigger than that? So his leadership is an example, and of course a lot of people do not like him, but those who join probably love him, and this is how he's able to do a lot more than, let's say, Boeing, with a lot less money and experience. And of course he has this culture of failure that is authorized, which is a new thing in a lot of other companies, like NASA, for example. At least what he says, that you need to fail, because if you're not failing, then you are not innovating enough. And you see it when SpaceX blow up its new test prototype for its new spacecraft. Well, they are learning, and some blows up, but then if they have the cash, they will be able to succeed. and they are there right now. Another example, after leadership, is the opportunity to be able to do things. And this is probably a big problem in a lot of groups, that Facebook answer with its own way. That can be scary because, yeah, clearly it's a very, very strong approach, it's a bold choice. They say that engineers at Facebook can create their own version of Facebook and test those versions on tens of thousands of users. Which means if I was a Facebook developer, I would have an idea, I would share it with the others, develop my own version of some part of Facebook, and test it in real life. And of course, it can lead to mistakes, and we saw it on the data security part, of course. But the question Mark Zuckerberg asked is, will this destroy Facebook? If not, let them test. They paid $5 billion because of the data leak that we all know, but whatever, there are so many. So it's a kind of approach. I do not think it's really difficult, but it's a way to crush the competitors. In Amazon, you got this extreme culture of customer-centric innovation, and I won't go into the details, but I really love the methodology that they developed, working backwards from the customer. That will be presented tomorrow morning. So I'm going to discover that with you tomorrow morning. And at Microsoft, it's crazy how this company changed, because if you remember, a couple of years ago, Linux was the enemy, it was a monster that has to disappear, and that Steve Ballmer was a kill. And now, Satya Nadella is embracing open source world more than ever. They bought GitHub for $2 billion, and they are one of the biggest contributors of open source with heavy investments since 2016. And of course, they don't do it because it's only a new mindset change, but because they can think about results, concrete results, about doing that strategy to develop themselves, get developers, support, and so on. So the question is, okay, how you can combine security and taking the risk? Because you have this big group organization who know they need to change, and at the same time, they try to develop this risk culture, but they have all those procedures to be able to cover themselves, to avoid mistakes. And they have all these new companies that have some very extreme approach, but that allows them to grab new markets, grab millions of new customers, or billions in case of Facebook. And, well, is it ethical or not? But at least some of them are having some incredible results by lowering the expectation on quality. And of course, when you look at security in the world of hyperconnectivity, where you have some IT devices connected everywhere, how you can combine both? This is a key question, and I think nobody has a perfect answer to that, but it's very tricky. And I'll give you some examples for the future that are very questionable. Of course, in the future of IoT, you'll have all those self-driving cars and infrastructure, the car connected to the other cars and to all the infrastructure of cities and the railways and so on, and highways. And something that I really love, the development of wearables and augmented reality, and the important connectivity that we come later. And I have a project where I have 5 PhD students working with 3 labs in IMT, which is called Ironman. This is a code name, of course, and we're designing using HoloLens 2 a software-based solution of mixed reality. So you see holograms to train people, and the idea is that we use holograms to train operators on their production line on the station to show them what they have to do in real time, and to see if they perform correctly, and to help them to perform better. It's the goal of the project. So this is just the kind of small introduction of augmented reality and some specific use case, but in the future, you can imagine that all this will change. The day such headsets like HoloLens is the price of this and the form factor of this. It means that it will replace the phone, but it will also replace the TV or whatever, because it's able to project some holograms, So you can have a virtual TV, you can have virtual posters when you look at the wall of your children or whatever. And for example, if I'm a fan of Japan, I can be living in Paris with this gray weather everywhere and looking at the window, and I can have a view of the Mont Fuji. And this is the world we may have tomorrow that we can expect. So if I'm a fan of Middle Age, then I can see my boss in armor, with a big sword or whatever. So you can imagine some funny concept like this. But in a world where this technology will be everywhere, when doctors will perform operations using it, what about the risk of hacking those devices that are connected everywhere? And how to protect them in the future? This is a big question. Because in the future, when you have this technology, and I can only invite you to test HoloLens 2, because HoloLens 1 was one of the big technological slaps in my face ever, and the 2 is better. I was eager to bring new tech devices in the event in Strasbourg to have a maximum of you, to test it, to try it, to continue to try it, to really understand what is the potential of it. But what about security? If the world you see tomorrow is not real, it's enhanced digitally. It can mean you are reading some information that can be hacked. You are seeing some faces of people that you meet in the street that can be hacked. So you can think that someone is someone, and when you see his avatar, then it's the avatar of another person. So there's a lot of risk as soon as our primary sense will be fooled by image. When this will be everywhere, well, we need you guys to secure everything. So I said in the beginning that what I really like in IT is that I like to understand the world better, and I like to have an impact, and if possible, a positive impact on the life of the others. And yeah, I think you guys, specialists of security, in this IT, hyperconnected world of tomorrow, specialists of data, analysis, all those things, you'll have those great powers and then the great responsibility that comes with this. You will understand the world better than anyone, and then you have the skills to help others' life and to help to build a better world. So it's really important because life is short, and for all I know, you are only one. If not, it's a pleasant surprise. Sorry for the jumping on the keyboard. So you are only one life, and then try to use it according to your values. And when you look for a job, think about when I design an algorithm for some GAFA or whoever tomorrow, is it for good or not? What I want to do with my life, with my skills, try to always be doing something that are in phase with your values. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Very good. Very good. So the ending came so soon, but I was overtaken by it. So, yes, thank you very much. It was a fantastic keynote. So, before I was supposed to go for 5 minutes into the breakout rooms, Emmanuel, you will also be assigned to one if you want to discuss directly with the people you are with. Definitely do so. So what is the size of the breakout room? Do you rather want to have a bigger size, so more people, or do you want to have it's okay the way it is? Could you indicate to me the camera or write it to the chat? If I don't hear any opinions, I will just continue with the regular distribution. So with at least 2 people per breakout room. I know we're not, so I can recreate. Okay. Good. See you in 5 minutes.
Du coup, si je veux parler à la personne qui est dans le breakout room, il faut que je sorte de la pièce.
Pardon?
Si je veux parler avec la personne qui est là, il faut que je sorte.
Bah,
En quoi?
tu mets ton casque.
Vous allez m'entendre. Yes.
Ah oui, je comprends. Ouais.
I will just exit the room. Who is talking?
La caméra numéro 3, ça marche pas.
Hein?
La caméra, elle marche pas.
Ça marche pas?
Bah là, j'ai rien en tout cas.
Oui, parce que je l'ai connecté maintenant, puis il fallait quand même. Oui, donc essayons après la prochaine fois.
Ça marche.
Parce que le vidéo n'est pas fait, si ça marche. Il est toujours bon. Ah, donc tu peux voir dans le preview.
Bah en fait, je l'avais mis là parce qu'elle s'affiche du coup normalement.
Ouais.
Mon
Ah,
choix,
oui,
ça devrait s'afficher là. Et là, si je mets la caméra, je...
Ok, donc je peux reconnecter.
Ouais, c'est. Il y a 20 secondes de décalage entre le stream YouTube et le stream. C'est bizarre, ça marchait avant. Ça marchait avant.
Hein?
Bah quand tu l'avais mis ici.
Essayons après la prochaine fois.
Ouais, c'est pas grave.
Ah, super. So, welcome back. Okay, perfect. perfect. Welcome back. We had a nice discussion, and I really love how the concept seems to work. Our question is already back. But let me start with the first question. I take the privilege of being the host. My question to you, Emmanuel, would be, what will you say, what would you say will persist of the changes that we have now through the COVID-19? What has changed and will stay the way it is in your company or in the business? What would you say? You have to unmute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was saying that the first thing that comes to mind is that before COVID-19, we were able to work 2 days a month in home office. Now, we have to be on site 2 days a week, which means offices are empty, and nobody likes empty rooms. Which means we needed to reinvent, even in my department, some ways to work together. So each sub-team in my department chose a day where they all stay together, but we cannot stay more than 10 because of the COVID measures. So we are seeing all of them all together in the week because it's just not possible. And when you look at all these small offices that are empty, you think that, well, I don't know, maybe 2 years from now, most companies will probably reduce their office or suppress their office and completely change the way they manage facilities, for example. So this is a huge example. And then, of course, if you do that, you have all the suppliers that work with your facilities that will also change, and it's also a new opportunity for, let's say, shared home office suppliers and people like that. And but the question I raise regarding that is it will be harder for leaders to build teams. Because if you do not see your colleagues often, well, is it still a team? So of course you can have in some case that a remote relationship kind of works, but in most cases it will be a lot more difficult. And when everything is fine, it will be okay, but when you face some difficulties, it will be even harder to solve them. So I think this is the first thing that will last. And then after that, if you have to completely reinvent the company because you are not having teams anymore, then you can imagine a future that is a little bit like the uberization of all our jobs, like IT people, all the people, just going in some company, working on one project, and then moving into another one, and so on. So it's, yeah, it could be like that. It could be very different, and if it's like that, we have to adapt. It will be a little bit weird, but human species has an incredible capacity to adapt, so I'm quite optimistic, but I'm sure I missed the whiteboard moments where we had all the team together celebrating successes. But we find ways to do it differently. Yeah.
It's very interesting because it's in some ways it's pushing what Niels Thomas was saying further, because it was like collaboration between companies. Now it's like what you say, get in a company, again, specialists joining for a certain while. And the other thing you said, like building teams, it's exactly what we see now in the conference. It's like you need new ways of doing it, and it's very different from many physically would meet. If I'm also looking forward to meeting next year, hopefully.
Yep.
Do we have questions, Nicola?
Yes.
Okay. So Nicola will take.
Yes, I have one question from the chat. So it's about how important is the IT moderation that you talked about. So the question is talking about excessive digital reliance and replacements in some case. Can we have a sustainable IT-human interaction in the future?
This is a great question. And honestly, I have no idea, because when you start to have some devices that change over time, it will be even harder to keep control of all those devices. And with all the connected world that will maybe at some point in time disappear somehow, because everything will be connected. So there won't be connected device, because every device will be connected, and our bodies will be connected as well. Then maybe this will be all more fluent than today, more natural than today, but at the same time, for IT security specialists, it will be probably a million times harder to be able to manage all this. I don't know today can really be sure on how this will evolve.
Very good. Very good answer. We have more questions?
I don't have more questions.
Okay. Then I would ask, I know that you... Yes, please.
Sorry, so there's also a question from YouTube.
Okay.
So the question here is, by what can secure the IoT, and at what level can we secure to protect the confidentiality and privacy and the continuation of the service?
So the first thing is, as my colleague mentioned earlier, security by design when you develop a solution is probably the most important key. Even if when you think about an edge solution, which evolve in time again, and with solutions that will probably evolve from an architecture point of view during their life, then I don't really know how we can secure that. Maybe you'll have a more complete answer.
My answer would be the same that I said before. So it's like you cannot look at it in an isolated way. So you have to look at all the variables. Plus, I can already point you to our event on Wednesday, where you will hear Martin Hellman, who will say, you have to practice. And also security needs practice because it's so complex to provide the security that you want, that you have to be very experienced in doing it. And this can only be by practicing it. So this would be my point to that. Okay. So then I still ask my question as last question. So you're a lot into this mixed reality. So what applications do you see to come for mixed reality? Because so far I mainly see demos like you pick and choose, like it shows you, okay, you should now take this one here, or you have some just highlights where you see, okay, here's something happening. So what are the applications that you have in mind with that technology?
So now, with the second version of the headset Orange 2, a lot of companies moved from proof of concept to a real project deploy. I was discussing with the Airbus helicopter manager a couple of months ago, who was doing some visits with customers in the customers' helicopters and showing in these old helicopters all the new layouts of the newer version of the helicopters. And it was way easier to do it using Horizon 2 than being a kind of virtual reality solution, because of course in virtual reality you are isolated and it's not an as good experience, and especially because now you have something where you are able to stream high fidelity 3D models from the cloud to this, which means you are not limited to the 3D processor that you have inside. So you can stream some photorealistic holograms, and it starts to be really something that is concrete. So this is an example, but in our plans, we have the ambition to train all our workers. We are starting the test next month, and I hope we go in production The project ends in September last year, but next year. But I hope we go in production, let's say in March or April, something like that. To train all our new workers with the headset. So yeah.
That's massive. That's a massive deployment.
Yeah, that's massive, and basically every manual activities can be helped by that. So whether it's for a technician to repair a car, an operator to build a boiler or a plane or whatever, you can do that. Airbus is doing that a lot.
Okay, cool. Do we have another question, Nicolas?
Yes, just now. I didn't have to take the time to read it. So, so thank you for the great talk. And the question is, you were mentioning a source of inspiration from GAFAM, which are all companies from the US. Why do you think there is no leader company with such an image in Europe?
So I don't think there's no leaders in Europe, but if you look just by the numbers, aside Spotify, we have not that much digital leaders in Europe, sadly, today at least. Not in all the new technologies. We have big groups like SAP, but we have no Microsoft or Amazon or Apple and so on. So it's obvious. I'm not saying that we do not have great companies that are inspiring, but usually they right now took some methodology that has been developed at Google and other companies, and I did not saw any great inspirational original examples. Even if I'm sure there's plenty of those, and it's an interesting remark, and I think about that for the next time I use some. I need to work on those topics. Thank you for the feedback.
Okay, very good. And thank you once again. Great. Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay. I'll just. Is everything ready for the next?